I realized that life is finally starting to make sense in a way that it just couldn't when I was in my 20s. There's certain things that, ideas that float around and are said to you when you're younger that you just brush them off and think, silly old fool, they don't know shit. Well, they do. For instance, people always say, you'll understand when you're older. And I always thought, well, if I was going to understand it, wouldn't I just understand it now? Why would I have to be 20 years older to understand these things? Why do they still call me a baby when I'm 25 years old, 30 years old? Well, I've come to understand why. Now, growing up, I always thought that I was just a person who adapted to life, adapted to every situation and every person. You know, like, not pretending to be somebody else, but sometimes playing a different version of yourself. And the reason that that happens is for approval, to appease other people, to make them like you. And sometimes you go through life and you just think, well, that's just how life is. You just adapt and, you know, you keep moving, you keep chasing. But then there's always another direction. And this for me came from building an insecurity around being a child who grew up mostly without a father. He was around when I was very young, but when I was around 7, he kind of drifted in and out of my life until I was 12. And then I didn't see him or hear from him for another 17 years. But anyway, the absence of a father built an insecurity in me. And that insecurity was that I just wasn't enough and that people weren't going to like who I was. I was just never going to be good enough for anybody to like or respect. And so I built this wall and, I pretended to be, or I brought out different aspects of my personality depending on who I was around and the situation that I was in. And then people tell you, well, life begins at 40. You don't know nothing. You're just a baby. Well, it's only recently that I've really started to understand what that means. And basically, it's lived experience. Yeah, you can be 25, 30 years old, be a grown man, but you just don't have enough lived experience. This isn't true for everybody, by the way. This is true for some, but not everybody. Some people go through a hell of a lot by the time they're 25, 30 years old, and they have a lot of lived experience. And maybe that's why some younger people seem quite a lot wiser. Maybe they've been through quite some stuff in their life and done some stuff in their life that others just haven't yet. Well, some people would say that I was one of those people that have been through a lot, but I consider myself an older soul from when I was quite young. But older people always said, what do you know? You're still a baby. You don't understand. And lived experience, by the time you get to your 40s, you undoubtedly will have been through some stuff. You will have dealt with some hardships and, along the course of your life and probably put yourself into a lot of situations that maybe you shouldn't have. Some stuff is self-inflicted. We all do it, and that's part of learning and growing up, I guess. But at the same time, when you're 20, you just do stuff. You don't tend to think too much. Well, at least I didn't anyway. You don't tend to think too much about the things that you're doing. And as you get older, you start to think about things a little bit more and a little bit more. And eventually you go through so much of life that you become so much more comfortable with who you are. All the pretense, all the bullshit, it just stops. You stop connecting with it and you go, why do I live my life this way? And you start thinking more carefully about the actions that you take in your life and the people that you surround yourself with. Recently, I've gotten rid of a lot of negativity from my life. I dispelled a lot of people who weren't doing anything positive for my life. They were just always bringing me down and nagging, coming up with reasons why my ideas are shit and all. I said this in a previous video anyway, but excuse me, it's very, very warm in here, and with a recording light on you, it's even hotter, but bear with me. Where was I? Yes. So the people that you surround yourself with, the surroundings that you put yourself in, the environments that you prefer to be around, they do tend to change as you get older, because you're a bit more comfortable with yourself. You've got thick skin, you know, that you've built up over the course of your life and been through traumas, trials, tribulations, and good times too. Not everything's so sad. But I do believe that when you're young, you have these barriers up, and you think about life in a completely different way to you do when you're in your 40s. I do anyway. I'm a completely different person to who I was 20 years ago. But now that I am this age, I've really started to become so much more comfortable with the real me. I don't pretend and pull out certain specific parts of my personality anymore. I just am who I am, and if you don't like me, well, then you don't like me. That's fine. You don't have to be around me unless we work together, in which case we need to be civil to each other, but that doesn't mean that we have to like each other. But we can coexist in the same ecosystem. And when you're 20, you just can't think like that. You just, you know, you're still trying to build up a repertoire of lived experiences. And in my 20s, I didn't even know what lived experience really meant. But I do now, because I have so much lived experience. I have been through a lot, I've seen a lot, and I've done a lot. And not everything I'm proud of. I don't necessarily live with regrets, but not everything I'm proud of. But I am who I am. And all the things that have come before now have helped to shape who I am now. And I'm very happy with that. I'm glad I've been through some of the dark times, because I wouldn't be who I am now. And I'm very proud. When I was in my 20s, I used to hang around with a lot of people that were a little bit older than myself. Like, you know, I was in my late teens, early 20s. They were in their 30s, maybe coming up to 40. And they were always calling me a baby and, oh, you'll understand. And life begins at 40 and you'll understand when you're older. And it really got me thinking the other day, like, oh yeah, I remember when so-and-so said blah, blah. And when so-and-so said blah, blah. Huh. It really does make sense now. But back then I just thought, shut the fuck up. Who are you talking to? Who are you to tell me that you understand certain things better than I do? But you really can't understand those things in your 20s the way you can in your 40s. And I know I'm kind of rambling and maybe repeating myself a little bit, but at the end of the day, you really become more comfortable with who you are, your own skin, your own company, and you start to have a bit of a different perspective on life. Do you know what I mean? So you see things a little bit more clearly because you've been through these situations, or at least when I see what some other people are going through and the things that they're doing in their life, I get it. I see the stupid stuff that I used to do, or not even necessarily stupid things, but the way I used to look at situations and react to situations when I was younger is a lot different to how I do now. And I say to people now, you'll get it when you're older. You just can't understand it right now. And they look at me with that same look that says, shut the fuck up. Who are you telling? And it's quite ironic, and it's actually quite funny, because I catch myself in those situations and be like, huh, remember you used to be young once. And I think we all need to remember that as well. Young people are young people, and they do what they do to get through life and to survive, because when you're in your 20s and your teens, that's kind of what life is about, right? It's about survival, trying to explore yourself, find out who you really are. I never really truly understood myself until I'm 44 this year, and sometimes I still think I'm learning who I am and becoming more comfortable with who I am. I am very comfortable with the person I am today, but I wasn't always. But it's only been since I hit 40 that I've started to have a little bit more clarity and understanding about what goes on in my life, what pleases me, what doesn't please me, what I'm willing to put up with, what I'm not willing to put up with. For instance, I've had the relationship that I'm in now. I've had this relationship for maybe 6 years now, and we've never once had an argument. Not once have we ever had an argument. Don't get me wrong, we piss each other off quite a bit sometimes, but we don't argue, we don't scream and shout, because really and truly, what is that solving? And that's another thing that just kind of makes sense now that I'm older. I don't need to argue and fight, and my opinion is the strongest, and I win, I win, I win. If you're pissed off, then you're pissed off. We'll just leave each other alone for a couple of hours, and then when someone's hungry or whatever, oh, do you want something to eat, love? Oh yeah, all right then, go on in. And it just is so much more comfortable now, not just who I am and in my own skin that I'm comfortable. I'm just comfortable with life. I've accepted that stuff that happened in the past, it happened in the past. I don't need to keep bringing it forward and dragging it into the future with me. Just leave it there where it was. Yeah, sometimes it's going to run through your mind, but you don't need to constantly bring old crap, old baggage from younger years and yesteryear into today and tomorrow. Just leave them at the door, because life isn't worth it. And there's another one. Oh, life is short, life is short. When you're younger, you think, shut up, I've got plenty of time. And you do, you know, a whole lifetime is quite a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it isn't, because the older you get, the more time seems to just keep ticking by, keep ticking by. And then one day you wake up and you're like, where did all that time go? And I've certainly found, since having kids, and I was a young father, my oldest child, my oldest daughter, she was born when I was nearly 19. So she's in her mid-20s now. And I have no idea where that time has gone. I still remember the day she was born like it was yesterday. And that's not a joke. That's a real thing. Life really is short. But at the end of the day, you've just got to get through it the best you can. But don't put off today until tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And I've said this in a previous video as well. Like, tomorrow's not promised. Get done what you really want to get done. Because if you keep waiting and waiting and waiting, you might not be around long enough to actually achieve it or do it. As always, if this video landed with you, like the video, share the video, and subscribe for more content about midlife. This is just my journey, but maybe it rings a few bells with you too. Until next time, stay safe, keep a positive mental attitude, and I'll see you in the next one.